This is Lysha Holmes, and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am excited on so many levels today. Not least, are we going international? I'm inviting somebody from, I guess, from the dark side, if that's how people see Rec to Rec, a fellow Rec to Rec, but also a fellow podcast host and a fellow teetotaler as well. So there's lots of different things going on in today's conversation.
And a fellow northerner.
And a fellow northerner, but I haven't actually checked off camera which football team you support. So you've already heard his voice. So without further ado, let me welcome to our lovely community today. This is Pete Watson, who is the founder of Mint R2R and also the host of the Recruiters Wagon podcast. Welcome to you today, Pete. How are you?
I'm very well, Lysha. Sorry for interrupting you there. Very unprofessional.
Right.
I'm very well. How are you?
Don't mind. I'm wonderful. I'm recording this at the start of the day in the UK. And you're recording it at the end of the Australian day. And I think it's the heat wave there when we're recording this in January.
33 degrees, and it's horrible. Anything above 24 degrees, I turn into the miserable northerner that I actually am.
You turn into possibly how I am, because I'm in a bit of an English rose. I always say 22, 23 is about right for me, and then anything above that is just unpleasant. Yeah. Well, I can't believe that anybody that's on my LinkedIn community, or if you're listening to this via the podcast channels, doesn't know who you are. But for those who are maybe not sure, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I'm sure there are millions. Who am I and what do I do? So I am Pete Watson, and I own Mint R2R. We are a small, but in our own little way, a global Rec to Rec. My business partner, friend and colleague, Frank Wadsworth, as you know, he's over there in Manchester and I'm over here in Australia. We have been going, Lysha, next month, we've been going for 20 years.
Wow, congratulations. Yeah. That is remarkable. Honestly, that's amazing. Well done.
Makes me feel very old and very proud in equal measure. Yes. and for 20 years, we've been relocating UK recruiters into Australia and obviously work in the domestic market as well. I'm based in Melbourne. What else do you want to know? What else do you want to know?
What did you do before Rec to Rec?
Well, again, me and Frankie started out together. So we started out at the infamous, notorious Progressive Computer Recruitment in Manchester. Right. I was on the perm side doing a very average job. Frank was on the contract side doing a much better job than I. Then he buggered off to Australia before I did.
Right.
And then when I arrived in Melbourne, I thought, right, who do I know? Who do I know in Australia? And I knew one singular person, and that was Frankie Wadsworth, who was entrenching himself in the Melbourne market, was rapidly becoming $1 million biller. Was building a team, just basically turning to golden balls of
There's no jealousy here whatsoever, is there?
No bitterness whatsoever. And then he became my best client, and we used to catch up regularly. And I used to tell him, how well my little Rec to Rec was going, and he was gradually becoming sick of corporate life. And somehow, don't quite know how it happened, but about 11 or 12 years ago, he joined Mint R2R, and we've been very happily skipping off into the sunset ever since.
Absolutely. I love the way that you do take the piss out of each other publicly on LinkedIn sometimes. I mean, I've known Frank not quite as long as you. When he was back over here in Manchester, he'd moved back from Australia. He became one of my best clients as I was growing out his Manchester team, and I did a really good job, and we just got on fantastically well. And then he kind of went a bit AWOL. And the next thing you know, he's a Rec to Rec, and he rang me. I mean, I still speak to Frank, and I have to say, huge shout out. He's one of the good guys. And, for anyone listening who's intrigued, you'll have heard of my recent podcast with Susanna and with Callum. I've got a huge amount of time for people that come and do the Rec to Rec market, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, Frank deserves his own little accolade, I think, on here. But 20 years is a phenomenal journey. It really is. And I mean, obviously, as we sort of set out 2024, where do you see the recruitment market? What's it like? I don't know whether you'll get feedback from Frank that it's any different, but what's it like from your perspective? What are you seeing?
Just before I answer the question about the market, Lysha, do you mind if I ask you why Frank wasn't invited onto your Rec to Rec podcast? It's because he's a bit boring, isn't it?
It's because he hasn't got a podcast.
Yeah, and he's boring.
He's not boring. He's delightful. He hates it.
Boring. He's boring, and he hasn't got a face for podcasts.
He has, because you're the absolute professional here. That's why out of the two of you, we should have got him. We should have got him on as well, shouldn't we?
No, I don't want to share time with Wadsworth. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Right. So
I don't mind.
how's the market looking? Look, I reckon I've had that conversation 88 times already in the week and a half that the market's been reopened. What I will say is the sentiment appears to be incredibly high and hopeful and positive. There's a strong argument that it's way too early to point to any evidence that the market is going to be okay in 2024. But people are talking the market up. People are just upbeat, and I reckon that's half the battle. What comes out of people's mouths is half the battle. But I haven't yet spoken to anybody who doesn't think it's going to be better than last year. What I would say is I don't think last year was a bad year. I just think last year was a normal year.
Yeah.
But that's
well, that could be the name of the podcast, actually. I mean, I've been doing Rec to Rec for 22 years. Key Recruitment's not quite as old. We're catching you up. I think I'm going to be I'm 19 this year. There you go. So just behind you. And I agree with you. I think 2023, we actually had financially our best year. And which, that's a lot of bloody hard work. And that doesn't include all the dropouts, which were inevitable. It happens even to the best of us. I think what you've just said there, frankly, is absolutely spot on. I think very often recruiters, we're the oracle of what's happening in the job market, obviously. And I think what we saw last year was inevitable based on the fake boom of post-COVID, wasn't it? Let's be honest. Everybody went into this frenzy. I personally and professionally don't want 2022 again, because it felt frantic. It felt like anybody could do the job. And that's actually not why I'm in the recruitment industry. I think that we are far more sophisticated than that. I think that where we're at right now at the start of 2024, and if you're listening to this later on in the archive, my prediction is it will be exactly the same as 2023. I think it will be the better recruiters will do great. Those recruiters who rely on transactional, crappy jobs, sending out mail shots, not actually cutting all the corners, basically, they will probably moan that it's another really hard year. That's my view.
It used to bug the hell out of me when people would say to me, during that boom period, they would say to me, "Oh my God, you must be making a fortune because like everybody's on fire and everybody's screaming out for recruiters." I said, well, think about it. All those recruiters, they're all making money. They're all happy in their jobs, and they've been unhappy for quite a long time. And now suddenly they're happy. Why on earth would they be looking for a job?
Absolutely.
My job's never been harder. In fact, during that period, I did something that I haven't done for 18, 19 years. I started placing rookies. Because the demand for rookies was so high. And you know what? I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it, because you're suddenly working with young people at the beginning of their career, and they value your advice. They listen to your advice. They take it on board. You're going to be giving them a step onto the first rung of the career ladder. They really appreciate it when you place them, and it was just very rewarding. As opposed to the battles that you have with experienced recruiters who, of course, know way better.
Well, that's true, as we do. I think what you've said there, I've gone all goosebumpy, actually, because like you, I tend to work in the more senior experience market because I think that's where my value and knowledge is. However, I will never turn away anybody that's at the start of their recruitment career journey who, I guess I see the potential in them. I see the right skills, the right mindset, the right attitude, and the right aptitude. And I think it's the most joyful thing to take somebody on that journey, because it's a very paternal, pastoral, maternal instinct, isn't it, to help young people? But actually, for our industry, it's vital. And I think I just want to make a point as well that you've worked through the recession before, because you've been doing this for 20 years. And I think what people don't recognise that maybe sort of, quite new in recruitment, i.e. post 2009, is that you earn your reputation. If you have integrity as a value on your wall, or you have honesty, the only way you prove that is actually when it's a better market, because you will not try and pull people out of jobs that actually shouldn't be moving jobs right now. And I know Frank's the same, and obviously Laura and Shannon are the same at Key Recruitment as well, that we do the right thing by people. And I think that's a really important point to make. So no, I agree with you totally. Who knows? Because my crystal ball is, it's in my bag somewhere. Who knows? But I think between us, we've got, oh my God, 40 odd years in Rec to Rec. It's just disgusting. But anyway,
can I turn the tables and ask you a question, Lysha?
Yeah.
Can the interviewee become the interviewer just for one question?
Of course, it depends what the question is, but go for it.
If you had your time again, would you still choose Rec to Rec?
Oh my! I had this conversation this morning because I actually had an offer accepted by a gorgeous lady who listens to this podcast. She's been listening for a year, and this is her first career move. So she's just done about 16 months. And I had two offers for her, one of which is doing the American tech market, and the other one is doing very high level engineering across Europe and America as well. And I did engineering. I don't know if you know that. I was engineering recruitment in the 90s. I should have been a colleague of yours in Frank's, actually. I had an offer at S3. I don't know if you know this. And they shared a car park with Primetime, which was where my other offer was. And I was actually undecided. I didn't know whether to go tech with S3 or engineering with Primetime. And what put me off is that they were showing me all the cars at S3. They're going, look at all the Porsches. And I was like, I just want the money. I don't care about the car. And it just really put me off. It's a bit convoluted, that. However, this is a very long way of answering your question. If I could go back to Lysha of 1998, I would have gone to tech. I would have stuck with tech because I was a top biller in engineering. I just absolutely nailed it. I was doing like £500,000 without even blinking, literally without blinking, just working my core hours. I never worked late. And I look at the opportunity in America. I look at the opportunity in Europe. I look at the opportunity where it's always going to be talent short. And obviously anything with STEM is always good. We're just always going to be in a deficit of talent. We always are. So my advice to anyone that I interview is, I guess you when you come to an expert like us, we are by virtue giving our advice based on maybe subconsciously what you've just asked me, which is what would we do in your situation? We're not you. I'm not anyone else. I'm just me. But yes, I think I love Rec to Rec. I couldn't do anything else now. That's the reality. I couldn't. I love it. I'm so passionate about our industry. And I think, I've got another 17 years of work before I can retire. Because I turned the big 50 this year.
17 years?
67 you retire. I can retire at 67.
Okay. Yeah, no, but you won't be doing Rec to Rec till you're 67, surely.
No. I'm just saying that if I'm going to give it my best shot at giving value back to this industry, which for me is what it's all about now, it has to be in the industry that I've been in for the last. I accidentally fell into it 22 years ago. I was doing a different market, so I love that you've asked me that question, and I love that. I need you to turn the tables on me, but we're going to run out of time if you keep asking me questions.
I know.
And I love it, and we could have a whole season. But
kitchen making food is going to burn the kitchen down. It's going to burn the house
down.
If
you read a story online about a house fire in Melbourne caused by a chicken stir fry, it's down to the Recruitment podcast. So we were supposed to be joined not by Frank Wadsworth today, but by Hannah Rogers, who joins you with the Recruiters Wagon. Can you just talk a little bit? Because most people are like, what are you talking about? And by the way, we're not pitching anything here. We're not being evangelical or preachy before we start this bit of the conversation, but it's really important because anyone that does follow me knows how passionate I am as a sober warrior. So talk to me about the Recruiters Wagon. How did it come about?
Well, we are pitching it. But we're not being preachy, but we're definitely pitching it.
Okay.
Okay. So about 3 years ago, I decided to do, because I don't drink, right? I haven't drank for 11 years.
Right.
So about 3 years ago, I decided to do a podcast with a group of other recruiters who don't drink. And I knew a couple. I didn't know that many. I remember reaching out to you and asking you to get involved, but we couldn't get the.
No, we couldn't because of the time difference. We couldn't at the time. Yeah.
So I put something on LinkedIn, right? And I said, are there any recruiters out there who don't drink who would like to come on a podcast? And I wouldn't say I was inundated, but I quickly had 7 of them, and it was like incredibly easy to find these people. And we went on the podcast. The podcast can obviously be found on Spotify. It's a few years old now. And the response to it was amazing. People just loved the fact that recruiters could exist successfully in this industry without drinking. And I say when I say in this industry, in an industry which has famously, notoriously leaned on alcohol for all kinds of celebrations and commiserations since day dot. And I didn't intend it to go anywhere, but I couldn't ignore the sort of response that it had. So shortly after that, I started a WhatsApp group. And shortly after that, I grew a pair of balls and just started talking about it more publicly and the fact that I didn't drink.
Let me just pause you. Why do you say grow a set of balls? That implies that you needed to be brave about it. Why were you reticent to do that?
For me personally, yeah.
Why?
I remember doing the podcast with Sean Anderson because Sean wanted to talk about it as well. And I said to him in the podcast, I think at the time I spoke to Sean, I was eight years without a drink. And I think I said to Sean, if you'd asked me to do this podcast 6 years ago, I would have denied even knowing what you were talking about. If you asked me to do the podcast 4 years ago, I would have been, nah, mate, it's my business, it's nobody else's business. But you asked me to do it now, I'm proud.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about it. It just took me a while to get there, is the reality of it. And anyway, so I got there and I started talking about it on LinkedIn. And within, I don't know how long it took. It didn't take long to grow that small WhatsApp group from 6 or 7 people to well over 100.
Wow.
And this WhatsApp group, and they're all recruiters. And this WhatsApp group consists of people like me and you, who haven't drunk for a long time, and Hannah, of course. And then it consists of people who are early on in their journey with alcohol. There are people who are still drinking and want to stop drinking, but are maybe struggling.
Yes.
And it's just, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what stage of your journey you're in.
It's very inclusive, isn't it?
Anybody's welcome. Anybody's welcome. There are people who've left the group when I've reached out to them for feedback, and I said, hey, I noticed you've left the group. I just wondered if there's anything I can take on as feedback. And they said, well, I felt like I was being a bit of a fake because I still drink. I don't want to drink, but I'm still drinking. And I'm like, mate, come back instantly because you are welcome. And all it isn't anything fancy. It doesn't claim to be anything other than a group of recruiters who don't drink, who lean on each other, support each other, advise each other, mentor each other.
Dare I use the word? Excuse the pun. Dare I use the word accountability? I think that I tend to. I'm quite an observer in this group actually, just because like everyone, we're all manically busy. I don't maybe contribute as much as I would like to at the moment, but some of the feedback that I'd like to give on it is that I think you're talking there about sober curious people, of which I think there are lots. So that, probably where you were 11 and a half years ago, it's probably where I was 7.5 years ago. I moderated for 10 months, which I would now class as sober curious. I was scared to give up what I thought was my link to social interaction, to relaxing, to joy, all the things you've said, to, chilling out at the end of a stressful day. And it takes time to do that. And I think some of the most poignant conversations that I've witnessed in that group, which is a really safe space, everybody, it's really important to know that's like no judgment, it's really safe. No one's trying to be a counsellor, it's just, this is what I've done. And I think very often when you're on a journey like sobriety, I imagine it's the same as a fitness journey, you do look up to people who are steps ahead of you. And I think that's what's really unique about the Recruiters Wagon, that you've got people like you that have been sober for over 10 years, and you've got people who are literally saying, I'm on day 3, I'm on day 10, I'm on 100 day, and it's absolutely wonderful but there's also no judgment. I know there's been people in the group who've sort of fessed up that they've maybe slipped off the wagon, and if you listen to any of the podcasts where it's with people far more intelligent than me, where it's psychologists and scientists and nutritionists and things like that, when you are creating new habits, you are going to break them at some point. It is inevitable. So don't be hard on yourself. But I think that's what I like about the group, that the whole culture that you have created, and you have to take absolute, kudos for this, is you have created a space where there is no judgment and no one feels gaslit at all for doing that. And I like that. Well, I think it's really special. No, it's true.
I won't. Look, thank you. I'm really proud of it. I think it could do more. It could probably be a bit, slicker and more structured and whatever. But it is literally just a bunch of recruiters who don't drink.
Yeah.
But it achieves, in its own little way, it achieves some nice things. I won't name her name, obviously, but there's one particular lady who was pretty low in a situation with alcohol, and she reached out to the group, and she just got a ton of love and some amazing advice.
She did,
and she followed that advice.
Yeah,
and she absolutely got herself on a wonderful path for 8, 9, 10 months, whatever. I can't quite remember. But then, as you say, she had a slip, and she came back into the group and said, guys, this has happened.
Yeah.
And again, it was just an outpouring of love, saying it's all right.
Yeah,
it's all right.
It is. I've gone all goosebumpy. So, I mean, I think it's really important that if you are listening to this and wherever you are in the world, because you've got global people on there, haven't you? It's not just Australian and UK. You've got people from all around.
People in America and
you don't, and I just want to say, you don't have to contribute. You can just be in the group, and you can archive it, so it's muted in your conversations. But then, if you need that advice, I will say I probably comment once every few weeks or whatever. I might, I'll just think, shit, I haven't been into the group for ages, and that's fine. I think it's really important that there are so many communities out there that they're amazing, and I've had sober people on my podcast before. I've had loads of. In fact, I'm due to be on someone's later on this month, I think, where I'm a guest. And there are loads of people out there who are monetizing what they do, and that's absolutely fine. They're coaches, etc., etc. But this is a safe space for people that are thinking, are sober curious, or who are teetotal at whatever stage you're at, and we'll make sure they'll just drop you a message on LinkedIn.
100%. Just drop me a message on LinkedIn. But it's 100% anonymous. It's 100% confidential. The only weird way anybody might know you is if you happen to share a telephone number with somebody who's on there. And the chances of that are slim. But if you do happen to see somebody on there that you recognize, then guess what? You're in the same boat. So who cares? You
are, and you don't. And I just want to say as well, you don't share anything publicly. There's never been any indication. And obviously, if people are celebrating sober success on LinkedIn, you don't, and you can go and say congratulations. People don't need to follow it back to you, especially those who are in early days. So, I just want to make sure we also contextualize where this sits within our amazing industry. Given that, you and I joined at a similar time where the culture would have been very similar, I expect, because you indicated that before with this commiseration versus celebration. Where are we at now? Where do you see, because you recruit for recruitment companies like I do, so I think we're both positioned really well to answer this. Where is the industry right now on supporting sober life?
I mean, it appears to be trying to get better.
Yep.
And I'm sure it is to a degree. Oh, look, it is. No, that's not fair. That's not fair. So I'll give you two examples. I had an old client of mine. They'd been off on some the high performers rewards weekend thing, whatever they're called, and they were in Fiji, and they had a 9 o'clock meeting, which went for about 2 hours. So it was come to about 11 o'clock, which is almost drinking time. And my client said, ordinarily at that point on previous trips, everybody would have just gone to the bar and just started early, but they didn't. They went for a run, they went to do yoga, they went for a swim, and then nobody really started drinking until well after lunch. So that's progress.
So we're pushing the can down the road, but yes, it's still progress.
Yeah, that's
Can I
progress.
just say, how far is Fiji in relation to Australia? Because is that like the equivalent of us going to Dublin or something? There's nothing wrong with Dublin. There's nothing wrong with Dublin, by the way.
I think it's about 4 or 5 hours. I think it's about 4 or 5 hours.
Is it? Right.
And then I had another MD ring me, and he said, I'm trying to come up with a list of things that, things that are genuinely entertaining for my people to go and do that don't involve alcohol. Pete, do you have a list? I said, no, mate, I don't. And I don't have time to produce one. I think he was suggesting I go and produce a list of sober activities. But anyway, the point is there are recruitment leaders who are starting to think about this stuff.
Yep.
Are there enough? Of course there aren't. But
no.
I
think the gate's open now. I do think the gate's open, and I think from a narrative perspective, the fact that when you became sober and when I became sober, there was no alcohol-free options. It was just you either didn't drink or you drank. That was it. Yeah. So I think even the fact that now you can go out and still be part of the social engagement and have the alcohol free, I think these are all baby steps, right? But I'm seeing here in the UK that there seems to be, and I don't think I've created an echo chamber on LinkedIn because I've got like 27,000 followers, whatever, connections. I think that people are trying to mindfully do things, like you say, that are not just centered around alcohol. I mean, if it's a night out, axe throwing, going for a nice meal, there's a lot more around sort of well-being, dare I say it, which I know, it gets overused, that word, but I do actually think that as more and more companies recognise what true diversity and inclusion means, you have to create a sense of belonging for everybody, and that includes people who don't drink. And obviously we've got all the intersections that go along with they don't just not drink, they do their other stuff as well. But I think I can see a shift, and I think I'm going to ask you a really important question now, which has been on my mind since we've started this bit of the podcast, which is, this is just that one listener who is in an environment right now, they love their job, they're doing really well, like, you know, we've said we've worked through a difficult market and they're actually doing okay, but they've made the life choice to give up alcohol, and they're in an environment where they maybe feel a bit embarrassed, you know, a bit of that shame, or they're just worried about what the outcome will be because they're in a sociable environment. What would your advice to that person be?
Do they want to stay in that particular job?
You could answer it with yes and then no, because I think that's how you're going to have to answer it as yes and no, aren't you? So ideally not, because they love their job and they love the people, but let's say yes and no.
If it's the wrong company in the wrong environment with the wrong leaders, even though they love the job, then there's an argument to suggest that that's probably now not the right job.
Not the right job
for them. It's not the right people for them. So they need to go and find an environment and a company and a culture and a leadership group who will be accepting of their situation, because some will, some won't. There are some people who don't drink who will still get persecuted, sadly, for their choices. To a degree, persecute is probably a strong word. But they'll have the piss taken out.
Have the piss taken out of them. Yeah.
That's probably a better way of
Kinda.
putting it. So Hannah and I did a 10-minute series of scenarios where we followed the life cycle of somebody who decides to stop drinking in the recruitment industry, and we tackled questions exactly like this. Only 10-minute episodes.
Great.
So please check them out. But to answer your question, look, I think if they've got a relationship with their manager and they are comfortable that they'll be accepted by the people around them for the choices they've made, great, stay. Don't rock the boat. You know, in fact, you shouldn't have to leave, quite frankly.
Agreed.
It's a shame that question has even been asked. But if they feel that they're in an environment, they're just going to have the piss taken out of them, then move on.
And I agree with you totally. I'm glad you've. I agree with you totally, and I think, you know, it's a term that's only really been talked about the last few years, but psychological safety, and that includes accepting that things change in people's lives, and if you've made a conscious decision that that's what you want to do for your mental health, for your well-being, for all the reasons that people do give up alcohol, of which it's actually very rarely to do with the actual alcohol, it's to do with lifestyle, then I agree with what Pete's just said. I think that's absolutely right. If you feel that it's a safe enough environment for you to go and have that conversation, to say, actually, I know you're just taking the piss, I know it's a bit of banter, but actually I feel really uncomfortable, I'm really trying here. And if that doesn't work, then I do think it's time to find yourself somewhere that's safer. And, you know, I think that actually a nice little footnote at the end of this podcast could be that for those leaders listening, if you have created an environment that really not just accepts that people are choosing sober life, but you practically encourage it, shout about it on your, you know, your social media. I want to do a big shout out actually to Katie McNichol, because I know that she's a performance coach and she's done quite a lot of work with Energize Group. And they've done a podcast around alcohol and sort of, you know, becoming teetotal or even just moderating. So I hope that I've come to the end of this. Obviously, we never really know what we're going to talk about. We kind of have an overview, but I personally feel that if I was listening to this, I'm hoping you've not felt preached to. I'm hoping you found this useful. It might be not about you. It might be about somebody that you know that you're working with that's going through this journey. So I hope we've given you some advice and helpful tips to make them feel supported. And there is a little expression that a lot of teetotalers use, which is one day at a time. It's actually a really great life hack to have anyway. So don't be hard on yourself. I want to finish on that. Is there anything you want to finish on, Pete?
When people join the group, a lot of them say, "Oh my God, I wish I'd known that you people were here. I wish I knew that other recruiters existed that have a similar attitude to this." And then suddenly they're in a group surrounded by those people. So please don't feel that you have to be like at your lowest of lows to see value in this. If you just want to pop on and just be surrounded by recruiters who have a similar mindset. It's just, honestly, it really isn't a big deal. It's just a bunch of recruiters who don't drink.
It is. We've all. I mean, I felt like a pariah for about 2-3 years, and somebody's confident, and I really am as confident as I am. And I was treated like a pariah by a lot of people. Obviously, it's my own business, but you know, acquaintances. I'd be on social engagements as well as friends. And I just think, as a lifestyle choice, do what's right for you, and hopefully this has given you confidence to know that you're not on your own. So thank you so much. And I've not heard any smoke alarms, fire engines, so I'm hoping
which
he's made a success of dinner.
Worries me even more, to be honest.
He's ordered a pizza. You know that, don't you?
Could be happening.
Uber Eats.
can we do two things before we go?
Yes, of course, we're doing a photo.
Can I take a photograph just so to prove
Yeah, I
that
love
this
this.
happened? You're going to smile?
Cheeky bastard.
Right, there we go.
Yes, I smiled. Thank you.
And the other thing I need to do as well before we go is just confirm on record that Frank Wadsworth is not boring. I was only joking. I love him like a brother.
I know, yeah.
And if you're looking for a job in Manchester, please go and see Lysha or Frank.
I was going to say thank you for remembering that I'm a competitor, but do you know what? He is, you know, out of all the people in Manchester who do what I do, he is the one that I trust. He is a true confidant, and I've always said there's enough space for all of us, for the good ones anyway. But yeah, I absolutely agree. Although his choice of football team is left, both of your football teams actually. So, but that's just because I'm now one of the champions followers. But I've been following them for 30 odd years. So there you go.
You're a City fan, are you? Okay,
yeah, well, I'm from Manchester,
okay.
so there you go. But yeah, I followed them when they were rubbish in the early 90s. That's what I've been following them a long time. So it's been. I knew it'd be joyful.
Good. It was lovely. It was lovely. But I need your help, Lysha. I need your help getting the word out on the Recruiters Wagon. So hopefully people will be hearing about the Recruiters Wagon from you a little bit more moving
They
forward.
will. And if you would rather, if you feel that you know me better when you're listening to this, contact me and I'll get you in the Recruiters Wagon. There's enough room for everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today, Pete. Thank you.
Thanks, Lysha.